So, the New Netherlands. Let's talk about the Dutch colonies in the New World. The Dutch, from the Netherlands in Europe, have the largest merchant fleet in the world during the 1600s. And what that merchant fleet that they had allowed them to do was control Northern European commerce. They are the merchants that people in Northern Europe go to when they need things. They dominate the trade industry. In 1609, Henry Hudson, an explorer working for the Dutch, sailed up the Hudson River. This is the river that ends in New York City and goes right alongside New York State. He sails up the Hudson River and begins a trade relationship with the Iroquois Confederacy in upstate New York. And from the very beginning, the Dutch are more concerned with trade, specifically animal pelts, and even more specifically, beaver pelts. They're more concerned with trade than agriculture in the New World. That has a lot to do with the fact that sable hats, which are made with beaver furs, were in very high demand in Europe at the time, and the Dutch were already heavily involved in trade. The following year, the Dutch have fur trading posts that are up and running in present-day Manhattan and as far north as Albany, New York. Being in the New York area, that was where the Iroquois League, or the Iroquois Confederacy, depending on what you want to call it, was prominent. And the Iroquois League is so strong that the Dutch had to work with them in that area. They had over 12,000 people. They were a formidable foe that could have stopped one European power if they wanted to. That red line you see there was a Iroquois trail across New York, and it will eventually become the Erie Canal. Now, the Netherlands were mainly Protestant, but there's a very diverse population in the Netherlands. The Netherlands, much more so than the rest of Europe at this time, was very tolerant of religious exiles. So people who might have been pushed out of their own country because of religious differences or even religious wars, like in France, many of them moved to the Netherlands. In fact, the Pilgrims, the separatists from England, are going to go to the Netherlands before they ever go to the New World. In modern-day Manhattan, the Dutch build a fort, and then a town grows around that fort. Eventually, this town will be named New Amsterdam. And from the very beginning, the goal of New Amsterdam is to make money. The goal is to make a profit. And therefore, they have complete free trade in New Amsterdam. They will trade with anyone and everyone that is willing and able to buy and sell goods in New Amsterdam, because that's how you make the most profit as a merchant. They also have religious freedom. They don't care how you worship or what you worship, just as long as you are willing to buy and sell with them. Also, at the same time that the Dutch are settling along the Hudson River and along the western side of Long Island, those are Dutch colonies in blue, the English are beginning to settle in Massachusetts Bay and out on Cape Cod and even in Connecticut and the eastern tip of Long Island. You might think this would cause problems, but at first it doesn't, because they're two Protestant nations that had formed an alliance to fight against Catholic countries like Spain. So at first, there's no problem between the English and the Dutch. The Dutch, heavily involved in trading, try to encourage more settlers to come over to the New World. However, the system they had set up was not very successful. For many people, it looked a lot like feudalism. It looked like they were going over and going to work somebody else's land and be tied to that land like a serf during the feudal ages. This is going to be a problem for Maryland early on as well. New Amsterdam suffers from having some not so good governors for quite a long time. And that really diverse population is hard to unify. There's no loyalty. You have people from all the countries of Europe as well as around the globe living in New Amsterdam. So when the British decide that the Dutch were getting a little too powerful and that they wanted to take over those Dutch colonies, and they attacked New Amsterdam, the British are able to take New Amsterdam without firing a shot. And that really demonstrates the lack of loyalty in those New Netherlands colonies.